has always defended his friendship with Michael. The two became close after the first Home Alone movie was filmed.
That's right. And just this past January, Macaulay talked about the pop star on the Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum podcast. He revealed that he and Jackson bonded over their childhood fame.
He reached out to me because a lot of things were happening, like, big and fast with me. And I think he identified with that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's almost easy to try to say, oh, it was like weird or whatever. But it wasn't. It's like one of my friendships that people question only because of the fact that he was the most famous person in the world. He was the kind of person who'd been through the exact same freaking thing and wanted to make sure that I wasn't alone in that kind of,
Was he fun?
He was awesome. He was hilarious. He was sweet, and people didn't know how funny he was. For me, it's so normal and mundane. I know it's a big deal to everyone else, but for me, it's it was a normal, it was a normal friendship.
And another longtime friend of Michael's was Corey Feldman. They also got to know each other because Corey was a child actor.
Melanie actually talked to him about Michael last year, and it was clear that he firmly believed Michael was innocent of any sexual abuse allegations.
All I do know is what I know. And what I know is Michael was a gentleman, and he was respectful to every child that I saw him with and to me myself. So there was a group of kids, and we all formed a bond. We were all friends with Michael, and I asked each one of those kids about their experiences, and every one of them told me the same thing that I experienced. All we know for a fact is that Jordan Chandler, who was the first kid that accused him, came out after his dad died and wrote an open letter and said that those stories were fake. He said it himself in his own words in an open letter. So we know that. We know that the second trial was negated and was proven to be false. He had 10 counts against him, and he was proven innocent on all 10 counts. So why are we even still talking about this? The man's dead. Every time it came up, it was resolved. It should be a dead issue.
Remember that one boy?
Now listen to this. I have to tell you this.
Okay.
So after I left the party, and the next day I smoked weed with Michael, and then I get in the limousine, I leave. I get back to the Sheraton Hotel at Universal over here. There's 4 FBI agents waiting for me in the hotel room. And my mom's there, and she's like, tell them what happened. And I'm like, what do you mean, tell them what happened? And I sit down with them, and they all ask these super sexually exploiting, questions. Back-sided questions, and I knew that at my age already. And I looked at all 4 of them, and I said, are y'all crazy? I said, what you think I'm gonna do? Tell you that Michael did something bad so that we can sue him for money? That's what I told him. I was like, you're crazy. And I looked over at my mom, and I was like, are you serious, Mom? I was like, what is going on here? Why are you letting this happen? And she goes, well, I think something happened, I think something. I'm like, really? That man did nothing but be hospitable, kind, loving, giving, everything you could think of. We rode 4-wheelers for 5 hours, me, him, and Chris Tucker in the mountains at nighttime after his birthday party. Him and I hung out and talked pretty much all night. Got a couple hours of sleep. I wake up, he's not even in the room. He pulled out a cot for me in his room because I asked him, I was like, I want to hang out with you. I want to be around. It was Michael.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with him. I wanted to hang out with Michael. He pulled out a little cot or something. I laid on the cot. I wake up in the morning. His bed's made. There's a cleaning lady that wakes me up. I keep asking, where's Michael? I go over. He's got this huge statue figurine that Michael Jordan sent him for his birthday because he collected that stuff. Went and smoked some with him. Get in the car, and then all this shit happened when I got back to LA, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I was like, I looked at my mom, I go, are you really trying to go at Michael and use me for a money grab? I was like, nothing. And I looked at him right now, I said, nothing happened. I said, Michael was flirting with girls right in front of me. Actually.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious because he was very charming.
I bet. It's Michael Jackson.
he made girls just light up, blush, and I saw him looking at girls' booty. I said, I saw you looking at her booty. He was like, I was like, and so I hear these stories of Wade Robson, and then I'm thinking to myself, wait, hold up, I know Wade Robson. Wade Robson pretended to be the voice on my album, Aaron's Party, for my brother. Because my brother didn't do it, so Wade Robson did it. It was like a little spoof thing, an interlude in my second album, Aaron's Party. And Wade Robson did the voice of like pretending to be my brother or some shit. And I'm like, wait, hold up. Wade leaving Neverland? What is this? Like, what do you mean leaving Neverland? Like, I left Neverland. Everything was cool, homie. Like, what's your problem? Did you dream this up? Did your parents tell you to do this?
Yeah, I mean, they tried to sue for like $100 million, and ultimately it was dropped. They got nothing out of it, as they should.
Nothing. That dude didn't do shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, I knew Michael better than all of them.
Yeah, I believe
even
everything
Macaulay,
that I've seen.
if it was Macaulay right now,
I'm not buying it.
Even if it was Macaulay Culkin sitting right here, he would tell you the same thing I did with the same assertiveness.
Joining us now on the phone, Donald Trump, old friend, real estate mogul, star of Celebrity Apprentice. How well did you know Michael, Donald?
Well, Larry, as you know, I knew him very well. He was a great guy. He was actually a very, very smart businessman. He was somebody that was very special. He lived in Trump Tower for an extended period of time in New York, and right next to me, actually, and so I got to know him very well. He would go down to Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach a lot. In fact, that's where he was with Lisa Marie Presley when it first came out, and he was there for a very long period of time, but he would go down often.
When was the last time you spoke with him?
Probably a year ago, Larry. You know, Michael was a much different guy in the last 7 or 8 years, maybe 10 years than he was. I always view it as two Michael Jacksons.
How do you mean?
Well, you had Michael from, let's say, up till around the age of 35, and that was somebody, the greatest entertainer I've ever seen. And then you had the later version of Michael, who was much more reticent. He was much shyer. I mean, you know, he was just a little bit of a different guy.
Oh.
And I really knew both Michaels. He was a terrific guy. He was a wonderful guy. But he lost a certain amount of confidence in the last 10 years. I mean, he went through a lot, including some very, very bad doctors.
And what about the business aspect of this? Is he going to be worth a lot more gone than here?
Well, he's going to be worth a lot of money. He's got all of his albums are #1 now. I mean, he's just knocking the hell. Probably they've never seen anything like it, and I guess the debt will be paid off pretty quickly. But he really was. He was a great businessman, and I talked to him. He'd come into my apartment, and we'd talk a lot about business. And as an example, he met with Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney was telling him, and this is a pretty well-known story, but Michael told it to me. Paul McCartney mentioned that he was going to try and buy back the other half of the Beatles' music, and Michael then went out and bought it. Now, you could say it's not very nice, and I've heard that Paul has always been very angry at Michael for doing that, but perhaps Paul shouldn't have mentioned it. Perhaps that's just business and the way it is, but he really was a very, very good businessman and a very smart guy.
Well, you're a sharp realtor guy, and you know Southern California. I was up at Neverland. We did a whole show from there Thursday. I never saw a property as beautiful as that. 3,000 acres. What would you do with it?
Well, I'm not sure exactly who owns it. A very good friend of mine, Tom Barrack, is very much involved.
And he was there. Their company apparently pretty much owns it.
Yeah, Tom is a brilliant guy and a wonderful friend, and he was actually somebody that helped Michael Jackson a lot over the last couple of years. But I think Tom has that. I'm just not sure what you can do it from a zoning standpoint.
Could you envision a Graceland?
Well, I could, but it's a difficult area, and you have to go through this town, and as you know, they drove him crazy. You know, the interesting thing is I've known Michael from many different standpoints, and Michael would spend a lot of time with my kids. I have beautiful kids, and at the time, like at Mar-a-Lago, and even in Trump Tower, the kids were very young. Michael would come, play with the kids. He just loved children. He was not a child molester, and I am certain of that. He loved children. He'd play with my son Eric and my son Donald, and he'd just play with them forever. He loved children, but he was not a child molester. And, you know, that whole final saga of Neverland and the police and what they did was, I think, a very, very bad part of Michael's life.
Are you coming out for the service?
They invited me today, and they've called me so many times, and I'd love to do it, Larry. I just won't be able to be there. I'd love to be there. I'd love to be with you. I'd love to be with the family, but I just won't be able to be there.
What do you make of this whole thing? There's billions of people going to watch this on television.
Well, he was a unique guy. You know, I first met him years ago when he did a concert at Madison Square Garden, and I was backstage, and I just spoke to him for a little while. And, you know, he was sort of low-key, and even in those days, and that was the Thriller days, when he had that great, great success. And it was amazing, because I talked to him, and I'd say, there's no way that this guy is going out to that stage to perform. And then you'd see him moonwalk across the stage, and the place would go crazy. And, you know, I've had every entertainer working for me, more or less, and I've just sort of know them all. I knew Pavarotti. I knew all of the great entertainers. And I think the greatest entertainer that I've ever seen was Michael Jackson. There's never been anyone like him. And I guess Elvis was like him, and the Beatles, and, you know, there were a few every generation.
Sinatra.
But Sinatra was great. But, you know, there are very few. I mean, these people, you can count them on your hand, and Michael was one of them. And just a great guy. He took he's just had tremendous, really difficult last 10 years. His last 10 years, he's been living in hell.
Donald, thanks so much for sharing.